Emotional education is what many of us are calling in the States social and emotional learning. And what it simply is the idea that educating the heart is as important as educating the mind, and that schools can do this very intentionally, that there are skills that children can learn to improve what we call emotional intelligence, and that's part of emotional education. And those skills involve things like being aware of your feelings and your emotions, being able to manage them, having positive relationships with people, being caring to others, being able to make good decisions, being able to be resilient in the face of challenges. And what we have been finding out is that the research tells us that when we teach these skills in intentional ways in classrooms, and this is happening actually all over the world, we begin to see that there are some very, very positive results, that young people are able to be more emotionally intelligent. In other words, they have more pro-social behavior. They're less likely to get into risky kinds of behavior, whether it's drug abuse or bullying or those kinds of things. And the other really wonderful thing is that we realize that when we educate the heart as well as the mind, young people actually do better in the academics as well. And both some research in England and also here in the States have said things like as much as 11 percentile points higher on standardized achievement tests. So it doesn't have to be an either or. Emotional education is about saying that we can educate the heart as well as the mind and do a good job at both if we are intentional about it in schools. So emotional education is actually saying that these skills can be taught as a regular part of a child's curriculum in school, from as young as 3 to 4 years old to as old as mid to late 20s, because there's the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, that is actually developing throughout that whole time. And we know from this concept of neuroplasticity that the brain can be shaped by the experiences that we give it. And so we can change our brain by changing our mind in the way in which we teach our children. In most countries of the world, people who are studying to be teachers are actually not learning how to bring emotional education into the classroom. And they need to be equipped to do this. They need good professional learning experiences as they're studying to be teachers, as well as when they already are teachers. Because what the research tells us, first of all, is that you can improve upon your own emotional intelligence first as a teacher. And that happens only, however, when teachers are given experiences in growing in that way. In fact, some research at Yale showed that when teachers are emotionally literate, all kinds of good things happen for them. They have more positive attitude in the classroom. They're able to manage their discipline problems a lot better. They're able to have less burnout, and they actually have a higher incidences of job satisfaction. So it really has to begin with teaching teachers this education of the heart. And then teachers need some good guidance in how to bring this into their classroom environment, both creating the caring environment that they need to have to create this kind of learning in the classroom, but then also what are the skills that can be taught at any grade level. And there are many research-based programs that could be used and are being used in different parts of the world that begin to teach young people these very set of concrete skills, similar to what we would do with math or reading. It's possible to do it with this work of emotional intelligence. However, teachers can't do it without that support, that ongoing support, because they're not learning it as they become teachers. We're beginning to do some of that in our teacher education programs, but it is very, very new here in the United States as well as the rest of the world. It's a very unique thing to be able to learn that as someone who's studying to be a teacher. So we need to bring that in to their professional learning experiences. Some important skills that I think a teacher has to have is, first, I would say the ability to integrate social and emotional learning into the academic subjects that are being taught in school. In other words, to be emotionally literate themselves in such a way that there's not a division between educating the heart and educating the mind, and the ability to do that. Why? Because emotion subsequently drives learning. It's as simple as that. And teachers that are not putting these two things together and don't have the skill to do that really are at quite a deficit in terms of what can happen in the classroom. I would say the other skill that's pretty important is to be able to effectively engage children and parents and others in the learning and teaching experience. That they know that learning and teaching is about relationship, and that they are able to have those kinds of skills and ways of being that really make that important to them, that each child is unique, comes from a different cultural context, and is able to look at each child in that way and has those kinds of skills that really builds that warmth and that caring and that relationship. And then finally, I would say the last skill, if I had to choose one more, would be the ability to have full presence, to be able to bring your whole self, your whole authentic self into the teaching and learning experience. And that involves several things. It involves being open-hearted. It involves being non-judgmental. It involves being able to be in the present moment rather than somewhere else and giving your full attention to that present moment. And it's also the capacity to be aware of your own thoughts and emotions as you're teaching and learning. So it includes self-reflection as well. A dear teacher of mine, Parker Palmer, talks about helping teachers be divided no more, meaning that the way they feel the truth about teaching and learning on the inside is the way they're able to be on the outside. So for me, that's a skill. That's an ability to bring what you know to be true about how you want to be as a teacher, and to have those two things be the same, that your inner life is also reflective in your outer life of teaching and taking care of kids and classrooms. So one of the things I would say to young people who are preparing to choose teaching as something that will be their life's calling is that it is life's calling. Because I think we're finding more and more that teaching becomes so difficult if it is not coming from a place inside of us that makes us feel this is how we are best to use our gifts and our abilities in the world and helping to change the world. And I remember when I first became a teacher many, many years ago, many of us had that feeling that it was a calling, that we were being called to do that versus something else. That yes, we wanted to help the wider context of the world around us. We wanted to be caring people, and that we felt that choosing education, choosing to be in the classroom was something that would best bring out what it is we felt was what we wanted to do. And I think it's not a decision that should be taken lightly. You know, sometimes we kid around and say, oh, teachers have it easy. They have big breaks during the summers and whatever. And those of us that have been in classrooms know that that won't hold on very long once we are in the real work of being a teacher. And the other thing I would say is that it takes a lot of courage to teach. That it really, really does. And the courage has to come from the belief of what we know to be good and true for kids, and being willing, you know, in spite of where we might be, the context that we might be in, to do that, be willing to stand firm in being child-centered and knowing what kids need and how they learn best. And so courage and a real willingness to see it as a calling, see it as the thing that it is for you to do, and only for you to do. So success in the world our children are going to inherit is really going to require a lot of innovation and a lot of creative problem solving. And what we have been discovering worldwide and I could talk particularly in the United States, that children growing up today in the last 20 years have become less and less creative on creativity tests that measure those kinds of things. And the sad part is that they're becoming less creative, probably because of the kind of education they're experiencing that gives them less opportunity to be creative. But the other thing we found out from some studies is that when a child daydreams, we often sometimes don't see this as a positive thing. But it turns out that the daydreamers do a lot better on creativity tests. So it appears as though it's something that is off task, but lo and behold, what's actually happening is that young people are using that time to have some creative insights, to have the creative problem solving that there's going to be need for later on. The good news, however, about creativity is that it also are a set of skills that can be taught. And I think that's the big one. And I think that when students are encouraged to be more creative, to own what it is they're thinking, to think in different ways, to be exposed to things like brainstorming, or be involved in other cultures, or be taken to totally different environments to learn, then the spark of creativity begins to develop, and that those original ideas and ways of looking at something begin to develop. And this is going to be essential for us to bring in the concept of creativity and knowing that we can actually be able to teach these skills in that area. But it will take, again, a real intention on our part to bring that into the world of education. Because right now, if we don't change what we're doing, we're seeing kids being less and less creative and having less opportunity to bring forth what really is part of the human condition to be creative. But we need the right environment for that to come out. So parents and even the wider community, all those people that are taking care of our children, have a very important role to play. First of all, we in schools have to acknowledge that parents and those who are raising our children are really the first teachers. And we're the second teachers in schools. That's first of all. And the role that they play has to be one that really is in partnership with schools. However, schools have to be more welcoming places for parents. You know, many parents, depending on whatever age a child may be, and probably many different countries of the world, are called in mainly to schools for when their child is not doing something right. You know, school is often not a welcoming place for parents. And so one of the role I think that needs to be played is that schools begin to see parents as an asset to the development of their child and their children in a school, but secondly, to really do the kinds of things that make school welcoming for not only the children, but the parents as well. And one of the things that I certainly feel is a good start in that is to begin to teach the same skills that we've been talking about in emotional education, not only to young people, but to parents as well. And that schools can play an important role in that. And many of the efforts that we're doing here in the United States includes parents learning these skills as well, so that we're partners, that young people are coming home with some of these skills, and they're helping their parents learn some of those skills by simply coming home and bringing them, but that parents also have the opportunity to come into school and learn those skills themselves, and we're in partnership around that. And that's, I think, the ideal kind of way that we can work with parents.